It's test 65, the third passage. It says the following passages are adapted from articles recently published in North American Law Review journals. Oh, God. These are going to be boring. Passage A. In Canadian and United States common law, blackmail is unique among major crimes. Okay, unique. You know, literal definition means there's nothing else like it. Another meaning would be special or different. Okay, so why is blackmail in Canada and US, why is it unique among major crimes? Well, no one has yet adequately explained why it ought to be illegal. Okay, I was actually expecting to be bored, but now I'm not. Because if blackmail, you know, I know what blackmail is, right? We see it on TV or movies or whatever all the time. You've got some dirt on somebody and you're like, hey, pay me or I'm going to release this information. That's blackmail. But apparently, nobody can explain why it ought to be illegal. Why is that? The heart of the problem, known as the Blackmail Paradox, is that two acts, each of which is legally permissible separately, become illegal when combined. That's very interesting. I can think of another example. You know, being naked is legal in your own home, and being on an elementary school campus is legal. But those two things combined, probably illegal. So blackmail apparently is similar. If I threaten to expose a criminal act or embarrassing private information unless I am paid money, I have committed blackmail. Yeah, I get it. I know what it is from, again, movies. But the right to free speech protects my right to make such a disclosure, and in many circumstances, I have a legal right to seek money. Like you can, you know, require that people pay for an LSAT demon subscription, or whatever. Your job has to pay you. You can demand that money. All right. So why is it illegal then to combine them? The first paragraph ends with this rhetorical question, and what it does is it primes me to expect an answer to that question, right? I gotta think that somebody's gonna try to explain why it is that these two things are illegal when you combine them. Legal separately, illegal when you combine them. The lack of a successful theory of blackmail has damaging consequences. Well, maybe they're not going to explain it. Instead, they're going to go on about the consequences of not really knowing why we think blackmail should be illegal. It says, drawing a clear line between legal and illegal acts has proved impossible without a successful theory of blackmail. Consequently, most blackmail statutes broadly prohibit behavior that no one really believes is criminal and rely on the good judgment of prosecutors not to enforce relevant statutes precisely as written. And I think we all can probably agree that that is problematic. You're going to write a law, it says explicitly in the criminal code that shit is illegal, that no one believes should actually be illegal, and then you're going to rely on prosecutors to use good judgment on who they prosecute? Well, we know that there are criminal prosecutors all across the country who are totally corrupt and racist and trying to, you know, stuff people in jail who don't deserve it. Like, sounds like an enormous, not obviously I don't think every prosecutor is like that, but there are enough prosecutors out there that would love to put people in prison for no good reason that this seems extremely dangerous. It is possible, however, to articulate a coherent theory of blackmail. Okay, great. This is what I've been waiting for. Give me an explanation for what blackmail is and why it should be illegal. The key to the wrongness of the blackmail transaction is its triangular structure. Really? What do you mean triangular? Well, the blackmailer obtains what he wants by using a supplementary leverage that depends on a third party. Immediately, I think about an example of blackmail, okay? Suppose I know that you cheated on your wife. I say, hey, listen, I'm going to tell your wife unless you give me 10 grand. The triangular structure there, I'm using supplementary leverage. Your wife, she's going to be pissed. And I'm using her as leverage to extract money from you. That's the triangular structure that this author is talking about. The blackmail victim pays to avoid being harmed by persons other than the blackmailer. For example, when a blackmailer threatens to turn in a criminal unless paid money, the blackmailer is bargaining with the state's chip, just like I was bargaining with your wife's chip in my previous example. Thus, blackmail is criminal because it involves the misuse of a third party for the blackmailer's own benefit. The very last sentence there is the definition of blackmail according to passage A, or the rationale for our theory of blackmail. Why is blackmail a crime? Well, because it involves the misuse of a third party for the blackmailer's benefit. Fairly straightforward. We have a blackmail paradox, which is, hey, these two things are legal separately, but they're illegal when combined. How come? And in the very last paragraph of passage A, the author promotes a theory of blackmail. If you're misusing, the another person in order to benefit yourself, that's why we've decided to make this illegal. If you want to just tell the wife that somebody's cheating, you can do that. And if you want to ask the cheater for money, you can do that too. But when you do the same thing at the same time, you do those things at the same time, now you're misusing, it becomes a triangular structure, yeah. All right, passage B. I'm sure that it's got to be about blackmail. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. Passage B says, classical Roman law had no special category for blackmail. Okay, so we're going way back in history. They didn't even have a category for blackmail. It wasn't necessary. Really interesting, because blackmail does seem pretty bad. If everybody was allowed to just go around and blackmail everybody all the time, that would be pretty tough. But apparently it wasn't necessary under classical Roman law. How come? Well, Roman jurists began their evaluation of specific categories of actions by considering whether the action caused harm, not by considering the legality or illegality of the action itself. So maybe under classical Roman law, it was just against the law to tell somebody's wife that they were cheating. The court would go, it causes harm, can't do that. No blackmail problem, if that's your rule. Now, I'm not saying that's a good rule. That's a stupid rule, because then anything you did that caused harm, you would be liable for, which, like telling the truth, or like point the cops like there's a murderer on the loose, and you go like, yeah, the guy went that way, and now you've caused harm to that guy, so now you're liable for it. I mean, that doesn't sound like a good system, but I can see why it would obviate the need for a blackmail law. Second paragraph of passage B. Their assumption, true enough it seems, was that a victim of blackmail would be harmed if shameful but private information were revealed to the world. Yeah, you're cheating on your wife, that does damage. I get it. And if the shame would cause harm to the person's status or reputation, then prima facie, that means on its face, just means like obviously without any deeper analysis, the threatened act of revelation was unlawful. So you did harm, simple analysis, it's unlawful. The burden of proof shifted to the possessor of the information. The party who had or threatened to reveal shameful facts had to show positive cause for the privilege of revealing the information. So, okay, I like this. There's an exception to the rule. So, like, if it's a murderer, I imagine that there was probably an exception. Like, it's okay to tell the cops when there's a murderer running down the street. You've got privileged information. Yes, it is going to harm that person, but you qualify for this privilege of divulging the information. That would make sense. Last paragraph of passage B says, in short, assertion of the truth of the shameful act being revealed was not in itself sufficient to constitute a legal privilege. So the fact that someone cheated on their wife, even if you could prove it, that does not by itself allow you the privilege. So what does allow you the privilege? Granted, truth was not wholly irrelevant. False disclosures were granted even less protection than true ones. Okay, so that makes sense. I mean, if you're lying about somebody, that's a whole different thing. But even if it were true, the revelation of shameful information was protected only if the revelation had been made for a legitimate purpose and dealt with a matter that the public authorities had an interest in having revealed. This is a perfect example, using my cheating on the wife and murderer example. I can see how murderer, probably that you're making that revelation, he went that way. There is a legitimate purpose dealing with a matter that the public authorities had an interest in. On the other hand, you cheated on your wife, tell the wife, is that really a public matter? I can see how that would not qualify for the exception. Just because something shameful happened to be true did not mean it was lawful to reveal it. Yeah, there has to be this public interest. Okay, so passage A is explicitly about blackmail the whole way through. It's talking about modern US and Canadian law. The purpose of passage A is to tell you, hey, we got this problem, blackmail paradox. Nobody really knows why it's illegal. Two things that are independently legal become illegal when combined. Last paragraph says, well, yeah, that's because of the triangular structure. Basically, you're misusing somebody else for your own benefit. Passage B doesn't talk about the modern blackmail paradox at all. Passage B just tells us about a quirk of classical Roman law where we had a whole different standard, where it wasn't these two things are both separately legal. It sounds like there wasn't really any free speech protection under classical Roman law. Instead, if you reveal harmful information, the burden now is on you to prove that you had a privilege to divulge that damaging information. And if you didn't, it's just illegal, which means that we don't need to even talk about blackmail. There wasn't a need for blackmail, a specific blackmail law under classical Roman law, because you didn't have that problem of two things that are independently legal but illegal when combined.